Greetings, folks. I'm going to start this video with a few basic facts about myself, which many of my regular viewers will already know. But for the purposes of what I'm trying to explain, it's relevant that I restate these things. I'm a South African, a native-born South African, who lives just outside the city of Durban, which is a large coastal city on South Africa's east coast. I'm turning 33 years old this year, and I've lived here for basically my entire life. What I want to explain today is that the international media does a truly horrendous job explaining the reality of life in South Africa and the nature of our socio-political situation. You see, if you were to look at South Africa through the lens of the international media, you get a very distorted image, which bears very little resemblance to the actual reality. If you get your news from left-wing media sources, they will tell you that any claim of a potential race war in South Africa is simply the paranoid ramblings of white supremacist conspiracy theorists. Meanwhile, if you happen to get your news from right-wing media sources, they will be screaming all day, every day on the subject of South Africa that a race war is imminent. As a South African, I can tell you that, like with most things, the truth of the matter is somewhere in the middle. The socio-political landscape of South Africa is difficult to explain to outsiders because, like with any place, any country, any culture, you learn the nuances and the subtle differences of the culture better simply because you grow up in it. Much like I would not presume to tell somebody living in rural Oklahoma what their life is like, I take great issue with outsiders who presume to tell me that because they read something on the internet, they know better about my country's future and its prospects than I do. One thing I want to make very clear about South Africa's situation is that it is not nearly as black and white as people think. I know that Julius Malema was once again in international headlines because he chose to sing Kill the Boer at the EFF's recent anniversary celebration. Here's the thing though, Julius Malema, as extreme as his rhetoric is, does not represent the thoughts and opinions of the average black South African. Think about it. I've lived here my entire life. As I said, I'm almost 33. Do you not think that if every black South African wanted every white South African dead, do you not think I would be dead by now? It just doesn't make sense when I hear people going on and on about how blacks just hate all whites and want us all dead. I'm not blind. There are factions and groups who do think that way, and they are a danger, the EFF being among them. But this is not the entire story. Most black South Africans simply want to get along with their lives and do the best they can. I may have my issues with the consequences of tribal culture, and believe me, I have many issues with that, but that doesn't mean that I automatically write off all black South Africans as a threat to my safety. In fact, I have been in situations where black South Africans would protect me at a danger to their own safety. So, as long as I live, I will never subscribe to the idea that all blacks are dangerous by default. At the same time, it would be naive of me to claim that the possibility of race war does not exist. Because while the violent element within South Africa does not represent the whole, it is growing. And the extremity of its rhetoric is increasing. And this is largely because South Africa's economic options or the ability to earn a living legally is getting more and more difficult. And that, again, is because of how completely inept and corrupt our political class is. Something you must understand about the prospect of a race war in South Africa is that those who would cause it, people like Julius Malema, and to a lesser extent the leaders of the African National Congress, if they ever ignite a race war, and there is truly a white genocide, the violence will not stop there, because it's not a simple matter, as I said, of racial purity. Even in a situation where all white South Africans are eliminated, whether by force or whether we all leave, that doesn't mean that the tribes are simply going to live in peace and harmony together. What people outside South Africa often fail to understand is that black South Africans are not one homogeneous group. They split into different tribes, each with different allegiances and royal families. And these tribes do not like one another. They have blood feuds and mutual enmity going back hundreds of years. And these feuds are not minor disagreements. These are issues over which people will kill one another on sight. So if you think that the only possibility of violence in South Africa revolves around the paradigm of black versus white, you are incorrect. This country, by its nature, is volatile, and black versus white is simply one layer, and the reason why that layer is being emphasized now is that the current generation of politicians find that doing so is politically expedient for their own ends. Because understand this, even if South Africa completely goes to hell and life is terrible for the average South African citizen, our political elites don't care, because even in that situation, they will still be able to support themselves and their families on the ruins of what's left. I won't go on for much longer because I could frankly go on about this for hours, but for the sake of brevity, I'll cut it off here. I hope that this is useful to you, and for now, farewell.